People are arguing about Nintendo prices again. So Pokémon FireRed and LeafGreen just released, and a lot of people are very happy about this because it's a very popular game, and there was for some reason no way to play them on the Switch, which is very odd. Like, it's extremely easy to just have a ROM of this running on the Switch. But anyway, we finally got it, but like with anything Nintendo does now, it's not without controversy. So these games released at $20 a pop, and to me that seems a little expensive, but I'll get into that more. But there's been a lot of discourse on social media about this, and I also saw some people sharing a Scott the Woz video, which pretty much sums up my view like 100%. There's no reason to argue with another fan as to if the price is worth it to them personally. Now, we could argue about the price with Nintendo. We can say that Nintendo is overcharging this and talk about the company, but if you're shaming people for buying a product or not buying a product because of the price, you're the issue here. Like I said, I think $20 a pop for GBA games, especially when GBA games were being sold for like under $10 not too long ago on the Wii U eShop. And considering that there's 2 games here, so you're spending $40 to play 2 games that came out over 20 years ago, I think that's a little unfair from Nintendo. I don't think it's ridiculous. Like, I don't think it's the craziest thing ever. I think for some people this will be worth it, and I understand why. Are these games very easy to play on an emulator? Yes. Can you get an unofficial game pack for these games for very cheap? Yes. There's the convenience of playing on the Switch, so I do understand where people are coming from. If you feel the price is too much, don't buy it. If you feel the price is right, then buy it. It's that simple. There's not really much else to say about this argument, but it doesn't mean we can't question Nintendo. Like, we can be unhappy with Nintendo setting some of these prices. I think $80 something like Mario Party Jamboree is completely ridiculous, if I'm being honest. It doesn't mean I think someone is wrong if they buy it. If they feel it's worth $80 to them, then all the power to them. That's why people can buy what they want. I think both extremes here are just extremely annoying. Like, the people who say, oh, you don't want to spend this money in a game, you're broke, you're cheap. Nintendo never has any issues with their pricing. Like, that's obviously delusional. And then you have the people who say, if you do buy this, then you're just backing a bad company, you're wrong. Like, there have been a lot of discussions with this, and it's been ramping up with the Pokemon games yesterday, and these discussions are never going to end. You always have chronically online people who have way too much time on their hands, who don't see nuance in anything. But going back to my personal opinions on this, I personally just don't see it as a fair price. I think if they bundle it for $20 or even $25, that's something I could support. But like, there's no new content here. You're really raising prices from where GBA games used to be not too long ago. And some people have brought up inflation, but I don't think that's a great argument because games typically decrease in price over time, or at least they should. The only way things go up in price over time is if they're harder to find. Like, the physical copies of games have gone up in price because there's a limited amount of them. Nintendo's not producing any more of these, so there's going to be less in circulation as time goes on. For digital copies, though, that doesn't exist. That's why most games go down in price as time goes on. Are there exceptions to this? Yeah, mostly Nintendo. But there's a reason if you look at online stores, whether it's Steam, whether it's PlayStation, even other games on the eShop, that these are games that were full retail releases that you could buy for a few bucks now because the price simply drops over time for old games. And I've seen some really bad arguments saying that if you want to get an official version of this, you're gonna have to spend, I don't know, like $150, however much it is for FireRed and LeafGreen. But again, that makes no sense because we're talking about a digital product here. We're not talking about getting the physical copy of it, because when you're buying the physical copy, you're getting the game, but you're also getting the actual cartridge with it. And since there are a finite amount of those, the price is going to vary compared to something that's simply all digital. You're not paying for a collector's item that's hard to find when you're buying this game. So that argument, I think, holds absolutely zero weight. Even though I don't like the pricing here, I think there are some good things, or at least there's something good to get out of this. And it's that there may be more older Nintendo games that come to the eShop. Like, we already have NSO, and I think NSO is great. I think for the price you're paying, you get a lot of games. I actually do prefer it in a lot of ways to Virtual Console, but the one issue I have is that you can't own any of these games. Like, there's going to come a time where NSO shuts down for the Switch 1 and then the Switch 2, and you're not going to be able to play these games anymore. But for those of you who have a Wii U, a 3DS, a Wii, even though the eShops and stores for those consoles are gone, if you bought Virtual Console games, they're yours forever. And it's not like that for the Switch. Maybe when it's closer to NSO actually being shut down on the original Switch, maybe they'll give an option to buy some of these games, but you don't actually own anything. And that's kind of the direction we're moving in the gaming industry, which I think is very scary. Really, since like the PS4 and Xbox 360, we've been moving to a more digital future. A lot of games just don't get physical releases anymore, even if you would expect them. I'm not talking about like small indie games, because that's not realistic for a lot of them to get physical releases, at least not initially. But a lot of AAA games now are just not coming out as physical copies, or it's coming out later. Because when it's digital, you don't really own it. I think there's been examples of digital games actually being removed from libraries too. When you actually own the physical cartridge or the physical disc, they can't take that away from you. Now, with that being said, you still usually have to connect to the internet and download stuff from disc, and now for cartridges and game key cards. So that's very concerning, and I know this is a little off topic, and Pokemon FireRed and LeafGreen are still digital games, so you don't actually own the physical copy of them. but at least owning a digital copy is better than just having a game through a subscription that you don't own at all. I don't think you need to be concerned about most games being removed from digital libraries, and if you're not connected to the internet, they literally can't. That's a reason a lot of people will emulate their old consoles when they're not connected to internet anymore, because there's nothing they could do at that point. If the console isn't connected to Wi-Fi, they can't remove games from your library, they can't check on what you're doing. So I think it is concerning, but I also don't think that owning a digital copy of a game is necessarily a bad thing. I just think owning physical media is better. So anyway, on to the next topic. When are we going to see more Pokemon games on the Switch and Switch 2? For licensing issues or whatever, there's not really many Pokemon games, or any, I can't remember, on Nintendo Switch Online. I think if there are, they're not main series games. I don't think there's a single mainline Pokemon game on NSO or the Nintendo eShop besides FireRed and LeafGreen, and obviously besides games that released on the Switch. It's just kind of sad because there's so much Nintendo could do with this. Like, I've not played every Pokemon game. I loved Omega Ruby, that's my favorite. But there's some Pokemon games that I just didn't pick up, and I don't feel like running an emulator for it. I don't feel like running an emulator for it or spending $150 to get the original copy of it. I'd rather just have it on my Switch if I want to play it. It doesn't mean I want it to be priced unfairly. Like, if they're charging a ridiculous amount, I'm not going to pay for that either. But it's just kind of odd how they haven't done this, because the Nintendo Switch and now Switch 2 have kind of become like the ultimate Nintendo consoles, where you can play most of their old games, at least most of the important ones, yet one of Nintendo's most popular series is just completely missing. And I know there's licensing stuff with GameFreak since it's not directly Nintendo, but I mean, come on. Something I would love to see is if they made like a physical collection of older Pokemon games, kind of like the Metal Gear Solid collection, where maybe they have like a couple volumes where they have the Game Boy and GBA games, then they have like the DS games and 3DS games. Like, if they charged $60 for that and you were getting a few games out of it, a lot of people would buy it. Plus, again, you would have that physical ownership of those games. Now, would remasters be better? Obviously, improving the games would be better. But even if they just did straight up ports, if they did something like with the Final Fantasy collection, where I don't know if it's technically considered a remaster or it's more of like a port, if they did something like that, they'd make a lot of fans happy and they'd make a lot of money from it. As it stands now, Nintendo and GameFreak are making no money from most of these Pokemon games. The only people who are making money from this are people who already have these games and are selling them, not Nintendo themselves. And it just leads more people to emulation. And Nintendo knows this. Like, they do a lot of stupid things sometimes, but Nintendo is not a dumb company. So I'm just very curious why they haven't done more with the old Pokemon games and just have basically encouraged emulation by not having these available on current hardware. But going back to my idea for the Pokemon collection, I doubt this happens now, or at least I doubt it would happen with like more than 3, because Nintendo's not going to make a $200 regular Switch game. Like, yes, they've been greedy, but I just can't see them doing that. If they're saying the old Pokemon games cost $20, or at least the GBA games cost $20, we have to add up the prices then. I don't know exactly how many main series Pokemon games there are off the top of my head, but a lot of them have 3 versions, so that's $60 right there. Maybe for like the Game Boy games, they'll charge a little cheaper. So let's say like red and green and yellow or blue if they want to do that too. Let's say they even do $10 for that. That's $40. And so then Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal, so that's another $30. So there you're probably already at $60. Like if we're just doing the 3 versions of red, green, and yellow. So there, you have $60 there already. And that's just the Game Boy games. Then for the next gen, we have Ruby and Sapphire, so that would be $40 there. Pokemon Emerald, that's $60, and then FireRed and LeafGreen. Let's say if they even included that, you're looking at $100 already. So we already have $160 just for the first 2 generations, and that's just my guess on what the pricing would be. And I could go on. The DS games would probably be more. The 3DS games, I'm sure, would be more. So I don't think it's realistic for Nintendo to make like a huge collection of every old Pokemon game. At most, maybe they would do like a Game Boy collection. Maybe they would do a GBA one. There's just so many, like, I've talked about this in other videos, but there's just so many things Nintendo can do that would be so easy and satisfy so many fans and make them so much money, but they just don't do it. Like GameCube Virtual Console or GameCube NSO is a perfect example. It took until 2025 on the Switch 2 to get GameCube games back. Like, why wasn't this on the original Switch? Like, we've gotten the Virtual Boy on Switch before a lot of other things, like before a lot of Pokemon games have even been ported to the system. So I don't know. I know I covered a few topics in this video. If there's anything to take away, it's that if you're gonna call someone out, call out Nintendo themselves for the pricing. Don't call out the person who doesn't want to buy the game for that price, or the person who thinks it's worth it. Like, it does not matter to you at all. Just focus on yourself and direct any of your feelings on it towards the multi-billion-dollar company. They don't care if you defend them, and you're not going to accomplish anything by arguing with people on the internet saying to not buy a game that they've already decided is worth it to them. One more thing I just thought of before I end this video is a really bad argument, like a worse argument than the ones I mentioned before, is that since the going price for these games is super high, $20 is okay. And I did talk about that, by that logic, Nintendo could charge, let's say the game's going for 150, Nintendo could charge 130 and these people would justify it. So extremely flawed logic. You can't necessarily reason with everyone. And it's just something I want to mention because it was such a bad take I had to talk about it. Now, if you liked what I had to say here, be sure to subscribe and I'll see you next time.